Today on the nose, a somewhat hostile but extremely short-lived takeover as I, the Diamond Boy Sean Murray, international heartthrob, rightful heir to the Murray's hair pomade fortune, and the first Jamaican in the Kentucky Derby, guest host in place of our intrepid leader, Colin McEnroe, who is away on a fabulous, all-expense-paid vacation to beautiful Waterbury, Connecticut, the epicenter of American culture. And as the immortal bard once said, when the Colin's away, the mice will play. Video games, that is. We're talking about the very okay animated Super Mario Brothers movie and the immeasurably better than okay video game, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I think it'll be a very good show, if for no other reason than the fact that Colin doesn't care for video games, and this is our chance to stick it to him. And if it isn't a good show, you'll likely never hear from me ever again. So it's a win-win for the audience. Find out how good I am at hosting someone else's show after some news. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary individuals, fools who rush in and fools who do your dirty work. Don't be alarmed. You're not hearing this voice in error. It is I, your intrepid host, Colin McEnroe, and I've been Freaky Friday'd into the body of our beloved nose panelist, Sean Murray, who sometimes is known as the Diamond Boy, as you know, and who is often known as someone who owes over $3,000 to Easy Pass New York. So rest assured, everything today is officially endorsed by me, Colin McEnroe. It will just be channeled through the 30-year-old black man. It has been an amazing experience to be in the body of a young black man. Honestly, not as cool as I thought, though. Like, I thought it would be a little cooler. Like, pop culture kind of older sold on how cool it is to be a young black guy. Like, don't get me wrong, it's nice, but I also have this odd feeling that, like, every cop is out to get me. Strange. Anyway, this week on the nose, I've decided to do something I would never do, which is talk with reverence about video games. And joining me in this radical shift for the program is this merry band of rebels, including Carolyn Payne, an actress, comedian, and dancer who is the founder, director, and choreographer of Kinetic Dance, Brian Slattery, an arts editor for the New Haven Independent, Pedro Soto, president and CEO of High Grade Persistent Technologies, and Wild Bill Usman, professor of media studies at Sacred Heart University. So, as many of you know, I, Colin McEnroe, do not care really about video games. I have no relationship with them, and this show pretty much completely ignores them. But I've decided that's no way to run a show, especially not in this year, because it's a massive year for video games across mediums, actually. Later on, we'll talk about The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, which will probably be my greatest obsession for the foreseeable future. It came out last month, quickly became the fastest-selling Nintendo game ever in the United States. And many are calling it one of the greatest games ever made already. Rightfully so, I might add. But we'll get to that later. First, we're going to look at Nintendo's other super success from this year, the highest grossing movie of 2023, the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Where did you come from?
Me and my little brother Luigi, we fell down this pipe. And now he's lost, somewhere in the Darklands.
Then it's only a matter of time until he's captured by Bowser. But you're in luck. I'm on my way to stop him.
Well, take me with you.
This guy's a lunatic, a psycho. He will eat you for breakfast. He won't even notice it probably, because you're very, very small.
You know what? Make fun of me all you want. But you were going to help me find my brother. Please?
God help us all. Because the first thing I take issue with for this movie is they title it The Super Mario Brothers movie, which is in a blatant attempt to erase the notorious failure that is 1993's Super Mario Brothers, starring Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, neither of whom, much like Chris Pratt, are Italian. and maybe I just have a soft spot for it because it came out the year that the person whose body I'm inhabiting, Sean Murray, was born. It's bad. It's not a good, like, undoubtedly a terrible movie, but, like, not to go the Big Lebowski on this, but say what you will about that movie, but at least it had a vision.
They're brothers. They're plumbers.
Oh no. Mario! Luigi!
They're on the trail of a kidnapped princess.
You know, like, if nothing else, like, the production design that movie is pretty inspired. This movie I found much less so. Pretty, like, unremarkable. And And that makes sense, like considering the last time Nintendo tried to make a movie out of their most marketable property, it was a legendary flop. So I understand kind of painting by numbers here, but it came out in the same year as Across the Spider-Verse, which is like very bold, incredibly ambitious, like truly spectacular, and like Across the Spider-Verse will probably make far less money than Super Mario Brothers, but will certainly set a new standard for Western animation and probably like cinema as a whole. So while none of you loved it, you all seem to tolerate the cynical cash grab that is Super Mario Brothers way more than me. So Carolyn, we'll start with you. Just tell me about your relationship with Super Mario Brothers as a whole, and then what you liked about it.
All right, so I grew up playing Super Mario Brothers obsessively. I still have Super Nintendo and play it now with my nephews. My brother and I are not allowed to play together even as adults because there's still some unfinished business from when we were 10, and those wars just they're never ending, and those wounds are not going to heal. So, I would say that I am a huge fan of the video game and all of its iterations, from Nintendo to Game Boy to Super Nintendo to N64. So as a Super Mario fan, I was cautiously optimistic to see this movie. And then my nephew saw it, and my 5-year-old nephew, when I asked him, did you like it? He said, no, I loved it. Oh. He talks like E.T., by the way. So I thought I was going to love it, and it really sadly fell short for me. I felt like it was a missed opportunity. I feel, and Sean, I bet you're going to agree, they needed like comedy writers on this, right? Was there no one with a sense of humor in the room? They had like the standard comedy like of every movie that exists now, but there's no like real specificity to like the jokes. Like there was 2 moments that got like an audible like laugh from me. And one of them was the antique store where you could hear, and it was such a passing in the background moment there when he's like first coming to the Toad Kingdom, Mario is, and they pass an antique store and you hear them saying, yes, it works. You just have to blow into it. And I was like, yes, all right, we're going to go there. This is going to be it. But that never, it was like they got one joke and were satisfied.
Does this thing work?
Yes, well, great. You just have to blow into it.
So for me, it was the writing that fell short and their lack of ability to really kind of lean into some of that nostalgia and finding the humor in like a 1980s video game that we're making a movie out of in 2023.
I found the star guy who was like wanted to kill himself.
Oh yeah, the depressed.
I like the star.
Yeah,
he was cool.
How long you guys been in here?
Time, like hope, is an illusion.
Please, we are depressed enough.
There's gotta be a way out of here.
There's no escape. The only hope is the sweet relief of death.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Werner Herzog, star guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pedro, you're an 80s baby, right? So
I am. Yep.
So is it safe to assume Mario holds a special place in your heart?
Definitely. Although the funny thing is, growing up, I didn't have a Nintendo Entertainment System. I was one of those weird kids that had a Sega Master System, which I would say set my life on a different course, just because it's, there is something fundamentally different. Like it was like a tribe thing.
Yeah, it's like Coke and Pepsi.
Exactly. I was the Pepsi kid. So, but over the years, I've since I got a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, played every single Mario game and absolutely loved them. So, in Mario 64 that was definitely one of those like mind-blowing moments in like the late 90s, and that when I was in college. So I, definitely, this is a series where the backstory isn't really anything important, so it's kind of interesting to make a movie out of something where there isn't much of a story that we're really caring about. And I think that like they I mentioned this in the email thread, if they were going to do this movie in 2023 and make it CGI and do all this stuff, they had this sort of very narrow path to go through to make the movie that Nintendo would have wanted to make and then make a lot of money. So, and I think they succeeded in that. It's very safe, has stars. It almost felt like a throwback animated movie from like the early 2000s, that like kind of like that Pixar kind of Sonic Boom residual where all of these people were coming up, the movie like Over the Hedge and movies that were like pretty family safe, that had all-star casts, that had decent production values, that had a soundtrack that was really nice, but didn't really you kind of stop thinking about it afterwards. So it was enjoyable in the moment, and that was about it. But I think that was really all that they were looking to do and that they had to do.
Yeah, safe is like the perfect word for it. Like it very much felt like a corporate product, and it is. But there's ways to make a corporate product that don't feel as like nakedly so.
Yeah.
And I think the point you made about like I was talking to McPants about this, the idea that like there is no Mario lore really. Like there are like signifiers and there are like details that we all know, but it's really so like I think that they were able to cobble anything because I was kind of arguing the opposite. I was like, well, because there's such a bare bones like framework, there's so many ways they could go with it. But I think because of that, like they don't want to get too radical.
Yeah.
And then like turn off like the people who have like a nostalgic connection to it. But at the same time, it's just flat. I don't know. It just falls
they
very
went
flat.
with Ghostbusters as their plot.
Yeah.
It was essentially the first Ghostbusters movie as their plot. There is a commercial for a seemingly ill-fated business.
It's me, Mario. And Luigi. Are you tired of paying too much for plumbing? Mamma mia! That's why the Super Mario Brothers are here to save Brooklyn. And the Queens. And your wallet.
You know, they have to save the city in the end. Like
save Brooklyn.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It is very strange. Bill, I want you to put your professor of media studies hat on for this one, which I assume is either a graduation cap or like a director's beret, but that's French. And this movie is allegedly about an Italian family, so maybe like a Coppola hat, like a roughneck in an Italian...
French production studio, though, right?
Oh, it's true. So like,
It's actually just a mushroom cap.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you say about this one, Bill?
Well, Colin.
Thank you for acknowledging my name.
I appreciate the whole kind of Get Out thing that you're doing here. I'd rather be talking still about that movie than
Absolutely.
this particular movie. This is not a movie I would have chosen. This was, my version of, basically helping McPants move by doing this. But fortunately, it was only 90 minutes, and usually moving takes a lot longer than that. I mean, from a media studies perspective, you already kind of nailed it, which is it's just a naked money grab. I mean, that's you asked in the email sort of why does this movie exist, and then you answered it exists to make money. Like that's the only reason for it. I'd love to see what Scorsese would say about this particular film. But if I'm going to be generous, and I do agree, you have to read things for what they are. Like it would be completely unfair to judge this as if it's women talking or something. I could see how it would be fun for kids who play the games, but I'm neither of those things.
Right.
So it wasn't fun for me more than anything. So I have kids who are in their 20s now. It reminded me of when I used to take my young kids to the movies and I would doze off. And they would be like nudging me, Dad, you're missing the movie. And I'd be like, no, actually, I really just want to take this, $12 nap right now. Yeah, I mean, Carolyn said this, there's not like a lot of creativity to it. It's very much paint by numbers, and it's colorful paint by numbers, but that's kind of about it. I did love little nihilistic star guy saying things like, all that's left is you and the infinite void. Best parts for me, only times I laughed during the whole thing.
I wanted to talk about because you said this is probably great for kids who play the games, but it's also like we were talking about like some of the needle drops in this were like no sleep till. Like who are the needle drops for?
Oh no, we're gonna be late.
No, we're not. Come on, let's go.
Hey, wait up!
This way. Come on, Lou, step on it.
Yeah, I mean, like there is no kid under like even.
I like that song.
I love that song, but even for my generation, not only is that song like dated, but it's also an overused needle drop. Like they also use that same needle drop in Guardians of the Galaxy, which came out a month later. Like I don't understand how. Like I understand like they don't actually have kids making these movies, so there's a limited. But like again, referencing Spider-Verse, like they on the soundtrack for both of those movies so far, they've gotten young artists that kids like and enjoy to make music for the movie rather than like reaching back into It's AC/DC. And like, who is that for?
Yeah, and I think
all the songs were like mid 80s. And was that supposed to represent sort of when the games were popular or when they first appeared?
I guess when they
I'm not
first
sure.
came
Maybe
out.
Pedro would know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the attempt was.
Okay.
But I think that also, I mean, the weird thing with video games, which is getting crazy, and I always, Mario came out in like 81, I think. Super Mario came out in 85 in the US, maybe 84, 83 in Japan. I mean, this is a 40-year-old property plus. I mean, that's kind of crazy. So, it's kind of weird to have this thing that's still relevant and being played, and there's still games being released that had this roots. I mean, that would be as if something was like, in 1983, right? You're talking about something that came out in 1943. That's kind of like the breadth that we're dealing with. So, to kind of so they were trying to play this nostalgia card of going back to the childhood and talking about it, and I think that's what the 80s music was. But like the whole Mario world has been sort of active that entire time. So to kind of peg the music back to the beginning of what was, this 8-bit game, when really all the Donkey Kong Country, that was the 90s, right? Mario Kart's been, there's eight of them or 7 of them going through all those. So like, it felt a little bit weird to kind of put the music there. I think like absolutely like as Colin says, having music that was maybe relevant for today with a soundtrack probably would have played better with it.
Well, I do
or
think
a blend.
that there is a successful way to like bridge that, kind of 80s to now, and like finding people who were children in the 80s and 90s and now have kids and they're going to go see a movie with them, like Chippendale movie that Disney came out with.
They did a great job.
They did an amazing job where it's like you could be a fan of it at any point, and it really like it was so well done, and this just was not that.
And Wreck-It Ralph, actually, with Disney.
Yes.
Absolutely, both of those.
That's one of the movies I fell asleep in.
Wreck-It Ralph.
You missed a good one, Bill.
Wreck-It Ralph is a love letter to 1980s video games, and it's really good.
One other thing I would say in terms of like a media studies perspective, it's also, it has at the beginning like a real Marvel vibe, like with the grandeur of the music and the apocalyptic threat. Like that couldn't have just been coincidence. And then the little coda that they do after the credits, to hype like the next film, that's also very Marvelish. So it's in some ways it's sort of like for kids like a gateway drug to superhero movies, and I can't but imagine that that's sort of part of the economic strategy as well.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of Yoshi teaser. I hate when they do teasers like that, where it's like because Yoshi is a sort of core part of the story. It's not like they use it as like, oh, you guys excited for this thing? But it's like, this is oh yes, spoiler alert. That's if you didn't watch the movie, they reference that.
That's probably the least essential, post-credit scene. Ever.
I think
so, not much of a spoiler.
I hate that movies are doing that now, where it's like you sit through like Marvel movies have trained us to sit through the credits, which I think is good for like.
I like it.
No,
in
I
Marvel
hate
movies.
sitting through the credits. Always.
I don't mind. I like that
it.
people have to sit through the credits now and see the people who made this movie, but I don't like when
No, they're just on their phone.
No, exactly. No one's actually watching the credits, but I think at least the people who made the movie get to believe for a second that people are. But I do hate when you do sit through the credits and then the post-credit scene is just that. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather like
people eating shawarma or something.
Yeah, but I thought that was
good
at the time.
It was
that
clever.
Was a good gag.
When Marvel does it, it's either like interesting for superhero geeks like me, or it's funny.
But then Marvel started doing this whole thing where it's like it's almost like an essential like part of the next.
Well, they do the mid credit scene advances the story, and then the post credit scene is like the little icing on the cake. So now it's even more.
It's like how about you make a complete movie? Like I'd rather just have like the mid credits gag, no post credits,
right?
Just like little mid credits, little joke, or like a lot of movies used to do like all the bloopers during the credits or whatever. That works for me, but I don't know.
I just hate feeling like that you're held hostage to sit through the credits. Like, if I go to a movie, I mean, Colin knows this, and this Colin maybe knows this about me too, that
I'm the same Colin, so of course
I get such anxiety in a movie theater because I always end up having to go to the bathroom or need more popcorn or something. So by the time I get to the credits and it's like over, I just want to get out of there.
Especially if you had one of those big oversized Diet Cokes, like, how long can I sit here?
Yeah, or a cocktail, which now you can get in a movie theater, which does make it more pleasant. But I
got an iron bladder. I could sit for hours. People are like, "Oh, why are
That's
movies
the
so
new
long?"
Superhero, Iron Man.
No. Going back to the music, though, I will say I did like the orchestral arrangements of the game music.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that.
That was excellent. No,
right?
there were some moments that work. Like, it was a great score. And Mario's famously has some of the best video game music, or the most memorable at least. Iconic. And it's also like the Peaches song.
Jack Black.
Yeah.
Jack Black is the best part of this movie to me. Like that was a coup to me.
Yeah.
Like, to cast Jack Black as Bowser, that's the thing I probably love most about the movie. Is like Jack Black is always Jack Black is perfect for
everything.
Yes. Like he's
in Star Wars. I mean, he can do anything.
Yeah, he's a talented actor, dramatically, but he's also damn near 60 or whatever. But he even for kids, he'll always be. No, what I'm saying is he's still fun for kids. I'm also 60. I'm Colin McEnroe.
That's right.
So we're in the same boat.
Yeah, the Peaches song has kind of taken on its own life, and I love all the how it's all over the internet. I just saw a video today of an 8-year-old boy who played it at his school wearing a Bowser pajama onesie.
Oh, it's amazing.
And his whole school is singing along and swaying to Peaches. So I do celebrate that this movie, well, it's really Jack Black's contribution to this. The Peaches song is probably the highlight of creativity here.
Well, that's a good place to wrap it on. So we need to take a break. But so give us 90 seconds and we'll come back. And for the first time in the history of the nose, we'll cover a real live video game. We'll be right back.
Peaches, 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 peaches. Ah! Oh, yeah! Ah! Peaches, 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 peaches. Ah!
And we're back. I am Colin McEnroe in Sean Murray's body, and this is the Colin McEnroe Show. We're spending this show talking about stuff that I, Colin McEnroe, would never normally talk about. Video games. In this segment, we're going to make history for The Nose. For the first time in roughly 13 years that my show, The Nose, has been on the air, we are going to talk about an actual video game. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
People have been falling ill after coming into contact with the gloom drifting through these caverns. Though here it seems almost misty and not concentrated enough to harm us. We do not know what waits below. So we need to be ready for anything. I know I'll be okay with you, Link. Let's go solve this mystery.
Tears of the Kingdom is the second Zelda game for the Nintendo Switch and a direct sequel to 2017's Breath of the Wild. Came out last month. They say it sold 10 million copies in the first 3 days of release, and it's now the fastest selling Nintendo game in the Americas ever. I'm not going to reveal how many hours I've already spent playing because probably reflect pretty poorly on my ability to balance priorities. Suffice to say, I believe this is in the running for greatest video game ever made. Brian, tell me why I'm right.
So, yeah, you may be right. And one of the reasons is because it's building on the legacy of the Zelda games. From the very beginning, the idea behind the Zelda games was that it was supposed to feel like you're able to explore, like kids in the woods. Mm-hmm. It's like that it's a game that rewards you for being really curious. It's always been that way. It's like there's no it's a game that rewards you for literally leaving no stone unturned. Right. And to try to, manipulate the world around you and to get into it as much as you can. And the fun of the Zelda games has been that it has kept pace both with what's technologically possible on consoles as they've gotten, better and faster. And also, seemingly, is that whoever this large team is now, they seem to be extremely creative people.
Yeah.
And that's so Breath of the Wild, which was a couple years ago now, right?
2017.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At the time it was sort of hailed as a major breakthrough, which it was, because of
not to cut you off, but like,
Yes.
break down why it was considered a major breakthrough in this series in particular.
I mean, a lot of it was because your character had abilities to manipulate things in the world that felt very new and fresh, especially because, other video games do these things. Like, there's one called Minecraft that is basically about building objects, about manipulating things in the world. And that's been around forever, but Minecraft doesn't have like a story behind it. It's more of just like a play world. World may be the best way to describe it. But so Zelda's thing was that it has these kind of like really interesting things that you get to do in the world that are also in the service of the story, which tend to be about sort of like quests. It's about finding princesses or figuring out what's wrong with this place and how to restore order and balance, those kinds of things. So Breath of the Wild, your character had abilities to manipulate objects in the world that could be used for like problem solving, which is kind of like the deal with a lot of Zelda games. It's less about sort of like shooting things or killing things, and it's more about solving problems. So the mechanics in Breath of the Wild seemed very new and fresh, but fast forwarding now to Tears of the Kingdom, and they feel like a very like beta version of the like Wild's abilities to create things in the game that then help you solve the game and that help you like move the story forward. And in a sort of like, again, sort of going back to the DNA of the game itself, I think that like to me as a 48-year-old person, one of the things that I find really beautiful about the current iterations of the game is that if the first thing was about walking in the woods, this latest thing is about learning how to like care for the woods. It actually has this like, to me, a pretty like deep and rather beautiful way of dramatizing sort of environmental catastrophe. A lot of the quests are about restoring balance to an environment. Something has gone wrong and it's out of balance, and you need to figure out what the problem is and then fix it. And when you do, the world is restored to the balance that it was before. And it even sort of taps into the creativity. The thing that's cool about this game is that you can basically pick up seemingly any two objects and try to combine them, and you're usually rewarded by creating something that's like super useful, or at the very least, it's super fun and interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and at the most, it's super useful. And that is combined with the idea that you're living in a world that actually has pretty scant resources. It's not a game where you get to like pile on a bunch of wealth, and it's not a game where you get to like buy your way out of your problems, as happens with some video games. And this is more a game about like doing a lot with the ingredients that are in front of you. And if you do it well, you can literally change the world. And that's pretty cool.
No, it's amazing. Like, one of the things about Breath of the Wild was that it seemed like the peak of what you could do with an open world, and then, but also not only with the design of the game, but the ways in which the players of the game sort of broke the game, and like they found new ways to manipulate things that weren't necessarily intended by the creators. And what the creators did with this game is, instead of, a lot of times with video games, people do what they call modding, for the audience who aren't familiar, like basically like changing the game and like manipulating the source code, or like finding a glitch in the game and manipulating to do something that the game designers didn't intend. Oftentimes the game designers would then find a way to stop the players from doing that. They would do what's called a patch, like update the game so you're no longer able to do that. What the creators of this game did was sort of internalize all the stuff that they saw players do over the last few years and like expand on it
and like reward players for doing that.
So like Brian was saying, like there's so many creative ways to like combine objects. Like there are these creatures that when you kill the creatures, their eyeballs, you can collect them. And in the old game they were just like, you could cook these certain objects and make potions and stuff, but in this game you can attach them to arrows, and now they become a homing device. Like if you attach an eyeball to an arrow, it will like lock on to a target. And there's so many other like just fascinating, there's like different natural objects that you can use to manipulate to turn weapons into something else. Pedro, I wanted to ask you talk about because we're mainly talking about the gameplay of this game, which is just some of the best ever. But Zelda actually does have a very rich and complicated storyline. But this game sort of, one of the cool things about this game and Breath of the Wild also is that you kind of don't have to engage with the story at all.
At all, yeah.
And certainly not to enjoy the game, but you could like play for. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, I've sunk 95 hours into this game already, and I'm not even 30% through the main plot. So like talk about that part of it.
I mean, I think the interesting thing with the Zelda games, as they've kind of kept going on, is this fact of discovering becomes really the majority of the game, and the plot tends to be, the thing you can kind of take on as you want to kind of move the story along at your own pace. And I absolutely love that. I think it's the fact that they basically designed the game so that like you can spend most of your time building, flying machines, helping people, Koroks, doing things, fixing the environment. I mean, there's so many things that you can do in this game that is just, and the interesting thing is that unlike a lot of games these days where in order to advance you have to they call it grinding, right? You're basically doing a repetitive task hundreds and hundreds of times so that you can get a resource to be able to make yourself more powerful. In this game, obviously there's a lot of repetition of things you have to do, but it's just so much fun and enjoyable. You're not just doing the same task. It's just there's so many different ways of doing things, and just the tasks that you do, just gathering things, picking up things, collecting things, just everything is serving to be able to do so much more that it's just a lot of fun. And they really took a lot. What's amazing is to see a game which basically at its roots is still a 6-year-old game, which for technology and video games, that's like a dog's age, right? I mean, that's forever. And to take that, to advance it into a 6-year-old video game system, still have this thing play as, it's the most advanced thing ever. Have all of this layer, all of this stuff to make this game that much better is just astounding. And it's really like, I'm just like last night I was playing and there was the sun was setting and the sky was there, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this is amazing. I'm just in this world and it's just absolutely beautiful. It's meditative, and I really think that Nintendo, it's interesting to see their philosophy. It's sort of like the kind of the flip side of the coin of the Mario movie, and sort of showing it being a cash grab. It's like this is a game where the amount of care and time that they've taken to make it. The fact is that also, it's not an online game. It's not a persistent world or anything. This is your own world that you can create and take it on at your own time. You don't have to be online to play it. If you stop, you can just press the power button and it's there waiting for you when you come back. And I just think all of that comes together just to make just such a great experience. And yeah, I mean, I know I'll be playing this in 4 or 5 years still because there's just that much in there.
I mean, you could make a cool argument that a lot of open world games have a central plot that sort of drives you through it. And some of them, I mean, I've loved a lot of the super plot heavy open world games that I've played. But there's sometimes a sense when you're playing them that it's you have these side quests you get to do, but then it's then it's time to get down to business and move the story forward. And that can be very satisfying. But one thing that's very cool about Tears of the Kingdom is the way that I think that the plot is loose enough that it sort of allows you to be very much like a co-author of your own story there. You get to have as simple or as complicated, as fast or as slow a game as you want. You get to decide what kind of story you make for yourself. And I've been watching my wife and son play it, and they play it in very different ways, and they are having very different experiences, and in some ways they are creating very different stories for themselves about what this game means to them. And I think that that's really, really powerful.
That's an excellent point, because something I've discussed with people that I've played this game, that also play this game with me, is that no two people have even an inkling of the same experience playing this game. You could literally start the game every game starts at the same place. The game sort of picks up from the last game. There was this whole, there's an evil villain. He's back, basically. And when he comes back, he sort of causes some sort of cataclysmic event that causes a lot of the pieces of the earth to lift up into the sky. And now these sky islands. You wake up on a sky island. You got to basically find your way back to Earth, find the titular Zelda at some point, and kind of figure out how do we stop this villain and how do we get the world back to where it's supposed to be. even within the first hour of the game, you could play that first section so much differently than so many other people. And we were talking about some of the systems that they have in the game about being able to build different objects. They give you these materials, these sort of like you can have like they give you fans and batteries and like these like glider things, and I've literally seen people make a B-2 bomber out of like by attaching and this is a game like there are no B-2 bombers in the game. Like that's not a piece of technology that exists in this world. It's like the creativity of people, and the game like not only allows it but it encourages it. I think that's one of the most like that's their strong suit. I think Nintendo, Pedro was talking about how this is a 6-year-old piece of hardware, and basically kind of a continuation of a 6-year-old game. And so much in the game industry is about hardware. It's about graphic.
Buy the new console to get the most sophisticated game.
It's like graphical capabilities, like how photorealistic it looks. Most Nintendo games do not look anything close to photorealistic, but instead of that being a flaw, Nintendo is a company that decided somewhere around the GameCube that they're going to not try to compete on a hardware front, but compete and create the most like essential gaming experiences where there are these sections in the game called shrines where basically like it's basically a puzzle room. You go into this section and in order to get additional hearts, which is like allow you to be stronger and whatever in the game, you have to solve a puzzle. And in these shrines teach you how to play the game and use systems that you're going to use to build things later on in the game as you're playing them. But it doesn't feel like a tutorial. It feels like you're figuring it out on your own. It's so inventive and thoughtful.
It design. Is. The whole construction, and I mean, I maybe Minecraft probably does this as well, but I don't have a lot of experience with that. But like to be able to, if someone's built, when you see the level of things that people are building, you're manipulating 3D objects. You know, in this world, you're putting things together, you're rotating them around, you're doing all this 3D space. Like, there's actually some pretty advanced stuff that people are learning. You know, so if like a kid is learning, is able to like build this stuff together, like actually, that's a lot of a skill building that will be used. Like if you go into 3D modeling, you know, I'm in manufacturing with engineering. You know, it's like looking at this stuff. I'm like, wow, like these kids are going to have a heads up on a lot to be able to be prepared for this digital future in constructive ways.
It also lends itself so I've been like all I do is so far I haven't even played this game myself. I've just sat there with my family and it's actually like super fun. You know, you have a problem and then like they go, what do you think we should do? And I offer like we sit there like figuring it out together. Like it's actually much more social than a video game usually is for that reason, because it's fun to figure things out together, right?
That's something what I wanted to talk about too is that for it to be a single player game, and as Pedro was talking about, like there's not like online multiplayer or anything, but somehow it still feels like a very social game, like you're saying, Brian, like even in the sense that like the community of Zelda fans online and seeing how other people solve shrines, what things people are building, it's so encouraging, and it's like it's also like discouraging to be like I would never have thought to solve that shrine that way, or I could never have, like I don't have the engineering mind to like build a B2, like all of my objects that I build are so simplistic, and then I see some of the things people are capable of, like I would have never done that, but then now they like
you're definitely learning that there are a lot of people out there who are smarter than
so
you
much
are.
Smarter than you. But it doesn't.
But the game rewards you at all levels. Like you don't have to be, you know, a top elite 1%er to like be able to have a really satisfying experience and get a ton out of the game.
Yeah, you can be as rudimentary in building as I am and still have a super fun time because you're still being able, like it's masterful that you could solve a shrine in the most complex way or the most simple way, and also oftentimes seeing how someone like, wow, you could have just shortcut that and just like there's this one shrine where you have to like these tracks that you have to get to this far distance, and there are these sort of minecart tracks, and somebody just figured out you can just not travel the length of the track, you can just jump from track to track and you can get to the shrine very like, oh, I would have never thought that. I tried to go around the entire loop, and it's just so fun to see how people approach the game, and it, like you said, it never feels like oh, I'm not having as much fun as that guy. It's like I'm just having a different type of fun. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to talk about before we get to the end is, as I was saying before, a lot of people are calling this one of the greatest games ever created, but also they were calling people were often calling Breath of the Wild, the predecessor to this game, one of the greatest games ever. I wanted to get both of you guys' opinion on like, what do you think about that conversation? Not that the greatest game ever made is an actual thing that can exist, and also that it really matters. But I think like it's interesting, like that the way that Nintendo was able to follow up, because one of the things the audience needs to know about this game is that it reuses the same exact map from the previous game, and that's one of the things that people were hesitant about buying this. Like, it's amazing that this game has like become like the fastest selling game in Nintendo history in America, because I remember a lot of
to some extent you've played it before.
Right. Yes. Right. And a lot of the pre-release chatter was that people were thinking like, well, this is just like
an expansion pack.
An expansion pack. They were like, oh, this is just going to be like bonus material for the same game. And then each sort of trailer that came out and gameplay demo showed that so much more is capable of. But one of the things they did in this game was that so now there is, it used to just be like you're on like flat land. And then now there's a sky area where there's these sky islands. And then there's also this area called the depths, which is underground. So they've sort of tripled the map. So, and then even the places that existed on the same level ground.
Radically transformed.
Radically transformed
because of the cataclysm,
So I want to talk about like, how can you like sort of wrapping your head around the idea like that this is just an extension of that game, but that it's such a jump forward that it can like legitimately be called one of the greatest games ever made, and it's not ridiculous.
I think that the genius moment was, I think someone woke up one day and said, you know, if I just start with this and build on this, and I've got 4 years to do it, what can I do? Rather than basically making a new map, making new models, you know, making everything back from zero, if I take this, what can we do with it? And I think that the fact that like this game is like it's so much bigger and deeper and more complicated, and it's the same world, but it feels completely different because of the changes that they've made. It's kind of astounding to see just how they managed to do that. And I think part of it is because they didn't have to go back to kind of ground zero on it.
Yeah, I think in other ways there's video games come in for a lot of criticism from people who don't play them, that they, you know, that like there's it's, you know, there are books that are better, there are movies that are better, there, you know, what do video games really have to contribute here, you know? And for people who think that video games are an art form unto themselves, Tears of the Kingdom is a really good example of the kind of story that you can only tell through a video game. Like, it wouldn't work as a movie, it wouldn't work as a book. It's a thing that needs to be experienced, and a thing that needs to be played in the way that they've designed it, so that the meaning of it comes through the strongest. And I mean, to the extent that we talk about like what the best things are, I mean, as a person approaching 50, like that's what I look for in games. I want an experience that I can't have anywhere else. And this one is like most definitely giving that kind of, like this one is easily clearing that bar, you know, that we are seeing and doing and understanding things in ways that we couldn't otherwise if it wasn't a game. And I think that that's like, you know, it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. And it's actually a shame, the point you're making, Brian, about that this needs to be experienced as a video game, because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that by the end of the year, Nintendo will announce that they're making a movie, a Legend of Zelda movie, which
perhaps the first segment should be their cautionary tale. Like, maybe just make the next game.
Yeah, and it's like it's definitely going to be, as a business decision, I could see why they would do it, but the story is the game is such a experiential thing that you have to play through. Like, and even Mario to a large degree is about playing it. It's like people don't love Mario because like the rich backstory of Mario. They love it because of like the functionality of the gameplay, and that's what's sort of allowed Mario to have the staying power that it has. But I think we got to take one more break. I wish I could talk about this game literally for the 95 hours that I've spent playing it. But
same.
We're going to take one more break, and then we'll come back and do some endorsements. So we'll be back after this. We're back. I'm Colin McEnroe and Sean Murray's Body, and this is The Nose. Before we get to the endorsements, I just want to say some thank yous. Jonathan McNichol, thank you for casting the curse that made me and Sean switch bodies in the first place. And then, of course, thank you to me, Colin McEnroe, for finally wising up that there's an audience clamoring for video game coverage on this show. So good job, me. And finally, thank you to this week's Nose, Carolyn Payne, Brian Slattery, Pedro Soto, and Wild Bill Usman. We'll start with you, Bill. What would you like to endorse?
All right, so I went to my first live event since before the pandemic, and I went to see a play at the Harvard Stage Company. It's called Trouble in Mind. It's a revival of a 1955 play by Alice Childress, which is sort of a play within a play. It tracks the tensions that arise when a black and white theater company is in rehearsal for a play about a horrible hate crime. And as they rehearse, imbalances of power in the theater company result in conflicts between the cast members and the directors about not just the production they're working on, but about America itself. It's a great production at the Harvard Stage Company, great performances, really well directed. And I think it's as relevant now, maybe even more so, than it was in the 1950s. One little important note, it's only there until June 18th. So if you're going to go see it, you got to go see it, within the next week or so.
Thank you for that. Brian, what do you got?
I have 2 video games to recommend for people who are looking for video games that give you experiences you can't get outside of video games. The first one is Disco Elysium. It's a role-playing game in which you wake up in a super gritty place and you have to solve a crime, but at the same time you have to figure out who you are, how you got there, why everybody is so mad at you. And you have this, and those two things have this amazing way of intertwining where solving the crime is also about like learning who you are and possibly redefining yourself for the characters around you.
Excellent game.
And yeah, oh my God, it's so good. And then sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum tonally is another game called The Short Hike, in which you're this cute little animal that's like just trying to climb a mountain, but it also has a kind of exploratory things about it. It's quite delightful. It doesn't take very long to play. And then along the way, this like the reason that you're climbing the mountain sort of gets revealed to you in this very gentle and ultimately like pretty moving way when you realize like why it is that you decided you wanted to climb this thing. So yeah, Disco Elysium and The Short Hike.
Pedro, what do you got?
There is a fantastic book on the history of kind of the video game business as it exists from the 80s on, and it's called The Console Wars, and it is by Blake Harris, and it's a great read. It's kind of like a narrative history of the war between Sega and Nintendo, and it also has an accompanying documentary that I think you can see on Paramount Plus, also called Console Wars. So it's a great read. If you grew up with this stuff, it's neat to see kind of how it all happened, how the shots were fired and who ultimately wins, because there's a bit of a plot twist at the end.
Awesome. Carolyn?
All right. On Hulu, you can watch this amazingly hilarious and fun series called Drag Me to Dinner. And it is drag queens competing to throw the most extra dinner party. And it's really wonderful, and I highly recommend it. And it has great appearances by, if you are a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race and follow drag culture, everyone great is on it, and it is really fun, and it'll really make you realize that your dinner party game is not drag party worthy.
Awesome. And I would like to endorse the 2 winners for the first time ever of the Pulitzer Prize in Fiction from this year, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver and Trust by Hernan Diaz. Just 2 incredible books. I don't know what the competition was for this, the short list, so I can't say they were the most deserving, but they were definitely deserving. Just 2 incredible books in largely different ways. Demon Copperhead is sort of a updated retelling of David Copperfield, set in the Appalachian section of Virginia, and just a very dense character story. And then Trust by Hernan Diaz is structurally one of the most amazing books I've ever read. It's sort of 4 books in one. It's a story about a titan of industry as told by a novelist who tells a story sort of based on this person's life, a memoir written by them and also their assistant's sort of memoir, and then there's a 4th book that I don't really want to spoil too much about it, but it's just one of the most to capture all these voices in one book as one author, but they all have distinct existences is amazing. So that's what I would like to endorse. And unfortunately, we are out of time. And what do you know? The Freaky Friday situation wore off just in time for me, Sean Murray, to return to my normal body. I wonder what happened while I was gone. Apparently, this has been The Nose. Colin McEnroe will be back next week, and I'm sure he will stand by everything that was said today. Thank you again to Carolyn Payne, Brian Slattery, Pedro Soto, and Wild Bill Usman. Thank you all for listening.